Okay, so let's get started installing WordPress using this control panel here, and it really does make it quite easy. So let's just go through the process. We're going to use the script installer, click on WordPress, and we can have a look at all of these here, but really we just want to do the install. Click on that. It's important to get this right. If you have HTTPS, a secure sockets certificate, then you need to select HTTPS. I don't. There's no need for me to do that, but there's an argument for doing it anyway. There's a slight cost with getting a security certificate on your website. I'm not going to bother. This domain, there's only one available here because I've only got one available on my host, so that's generally the case with most people. Now here is where we specify which directory we want this to be put in. If you're installing multiple web applications, for example, you're going to install your website as well as a shop separately from your website on your web host, you might want to put them in different directories. Not 100% necessary to do that, but it's a good idea. In this case, I'm only going to install WordPress by itself. There's no need for me to put it into a subdirectory, so I'm just going to blank that out, leave this box empty here. These site settings I can set up if I want, or I can fix them up later. Let's just do them now. Wedding Steps Australia, and my tagline. As I said, we can change these later. Multi-site, I don't want to do that. Most people wouldn't want to do that. That's a fairly specialized thing. However, it's nice to know if you did actually ever want to do that. It's easy by just selecting that button. Okay, moving on. The admin account. This is the super administrator on your account. You definitely want to make sure this has a strong or a not easily guessed username and a very strong password. And then thereafter you would set yourself up another administrator account for yourself to use, keeping this one safe. So let's change it to something that isn't easily guessed. So we'll call it to alright, boss teacher. Okay, now here, if you start typing in a password, as you can see, it's visible. So be careful where you do this. You're using a web form here, so you want to make sure you pass through this process as quickly as possible. Now it's going to determine whether your password is strong enough. This one's just a bit too short. Probably a good idea just to use this tool here to randomly create one for you. Don't worry if you feel like you can't remember this password, because as I said before, you're going to set up another account for yourself. Okay, so that's fine. Now here is where you set up your admin email, and this is the primary email address for your website. Now, because we're doing this first, installing WordPress first, this email address doesn't exist. So you might want to put in your real email address. And I can do that. Or what I can do is I can just pause out of this and go back to my control panel in a new tab, so I don't muck this process up. Go back to my CPanel, and I'm just going to go back here and create the email address that I need. Okay, and I've done that just before, but it's a very simple process. The email address, a password, confirm password. You can use this password generator here and just create an account, and that'll add another email address down here. As you can see, I've already created one, so I can go back to this tab and I'll just change that to info. Okay, so that's correct now. Moving on, choose the language, yes, English, plugins, login limiter, that's always a good idea, just gives you a basic level of protection on your website. Advanced options, you probably don't want to muck about here, but it's a good idea just to look at these settings disable update notifications. You probably don't want to disable, but at the same time you probably don't want to auto upgrade your WordPress core or your plugins or your themes. You just want to be notified, and then you make the decision about whether you upgrade. That's really the best way to do it. Some may have differing opinions about that, but really it's just best to do it when you think it's safe to do it. Okay, but this is something that you really do want. You want it to back up maybe once a week at least, and keep four backups. Yep. Okay, so that's fine. Moving on, then selecting a theme. We don't need to do this. We'll just use the default theme. It really can be added later. Okay, now and at the bottom here, I can have it. I can have the installation instructions for this emailed to me, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to put in my Gmail address. So that I've got it sent to me. But at the same time, I'm also going to write it down, of course. Okay, so that's all of this. So before I press install, I'm just going to take a copy of all this so that I can remember what I've done. And I've got my notepad up here. So WordPress installation. Okay, admin username and password. So this is what you should do. This is what I do whenever I set a website up for myself or anyone else. I always write this stuff down and save it and then put it somewhere safe, because your website's useless if you can't log into it. Alright, so now I've got all I need there. I think that's probably all I need to worry about. Yep, okay, so now I'm ready to install. So let's go through that process. Okay, so now the installation is happening, and I'm just going to pause this recording until it gets to about there. Okay, well, that didn't take long at all. The software has been installed successfully. These are the two links that you'll need, so I'm just going to pop them into my notepad over here. Right, this particular one here, that's what you'll need to log into. Okay, so no, I don't want a tweet. I'll just go back to the overview. And right, and down here you can see this installation has happened. And if I want to, I can check my email account here, access webmail, and just see whether the webmail works at the same time. So this is a good way to test that your email's working as well. Whoops. Okay. You can use any of those email programs. So there's my new installation of WordPress done. Okay, that's fine, and it will also have been sent to my Gmail account. Okay, so now we have a WordPress, and if we go to our root directory now and just refresh that, we should be able to see WordPress. And there we have it. Okay, so that's done. We've installed WordPress using CPanel. Easy peasy. Let's move on to the next step.